Hello, this is Professor McLaughlin. I would like to give you all a brief lecture on tort law following the slides in Chapter 8. This will only be a 10 or 11 minute lecture following the slides. This is plenty of time in order to introduce you to the basic concepts of tort law. And as we cover the chapters that follow this in the textbook, you'll see that we'll revisit these concepts again so that, and I will continue to add more narrated slide presentations in addition to maybe a podcast. It's a very important area for business law since it's a way that businesses can sue one another, but it is the primary way that consumers and stakeholders in the business sue the business as well. So vendors, stakeholders, and only for wrongs that are civil. So we exit now the criminal area. We ignore insurance. It's an interesting concept, but we're going to enter a world where insurance doesn't exist. So we want to look at the bare bones of the claim that's being brought. And in tort, the claim is really brought so that a wrongdoer can compensate an injured party. So tort law is all about compensation. So the purposes of tort law ideally are to compensate innocent injured persons. And innocent is an important word because if you somehow contributed to your own harm, you won't be compensated for the percentage. I mean, the law actually breaks it down. You will not be compensated for the percentage of the harm that you suffered that was due to your own negligence or your own reckless behavior or your own tortious behavior. So at the very outset, when claims are filed, parties really spell out in dollar amounts what they're looking for, and then the court can offset the compensation that you want by calculating your own negligence. So how much of your harm, your medical bills, your lost wages because you couldn't go to work was really because you were also negligent. You weren't looking where you were going, that kind of thing. Also, tort law can deter future wrongs. Think about the cases where parties sue a car manufacturer, any kind of products liability, the motivating reason, idealistically, behind that suit to get compensation for injured parties is to stop that manufacturer from allowing defective products or negligently allowing products that are damaged in some way into the stream of commerce to hurt consumers. So these are the purposes of tort law. One could argue that we've gotten away from that today with kind of too much suing, not enough acceptance of the fact that there are just accidents that happen. And then punitive damages that get out of hand can contribute to this view that we're just a compensation culture, that everybody's out to get compensated for a harm and wants to sue over everything. So this is the part of the course where we really get into neat and tidy classifications. The law is really good with classifications. And tort allows us to exercise that skill where we can identify which area of tort law are we in. And then we're going to have another list underneath that. Well, we're in intentional torts, fine. Are we in an intentional tort that's against a person, a piece of property, or is it economic? Or are we in negligent torts? And then we'll list all the elements of negligence. Or are we in strict liability torts? So this is where we begin to really utilize our skills at classifying and categorizing our torts, and your thinking should follow that as well. As you answer questions on the quizzes and as you look at exam questions, your very first step should be identifying which area of tort law am I in. So tort law is separated into intentional torts, negligent torts, and strict liability torts. Intentional torts are torts where you intended the act. Sometimes you intended to hurt someone, and maybe you hurt someone else, not the person you originally intended to hurt, but regardless, you intended an act, and the result of that intention was a civil wrong against somebody. So intentional torts against persons. This chapter, chapter 8, your book does a very good job of spelling out what these definitions are and giving examples of what they are. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little bit, and you can revisit it with your questions in the quizzes and your reading in the book. So next you'll have intentional torts against property, things like trespass, private nuisance where your music is too loud, or the smoke from your barbecue is all over in your neighbor's patio, or conversion, which is just another word for theft. It's a tortious theft where you're not actually want to get the person put in jail. Instead, you want to have them compensate you for a loss. And then finally, we have intentional torts against economic interest, and these are really business torts. Disparagement is really defamation of a business. It's really making a disparaging comment, a bad comment about somebody's business and publishing that to a third party. And you can publish by texting it or putting it on the internet or the newspaper or an email or on your Facebook page. That's disparagement. And then a really, really juicy one is fraudulent misrepresentation. Over the next 3 chapters, we're really going to focus on fraud quite a bit and misrepresentation quite a bit. So look at the 5 elements that your book gives you for that, and make sure that when you're answering a question that has to do with fraudulent misrepresentation, that each of the elements are met. If one, and this is true for all the torts, if one element is missing, then you might not be successful with that claim, which is why if you've ever seen a lawsuit for this area, a tort law, a claim for civil tort, you'll see that they list multiple causes of action just in case the court or the jury find that one of the elements is missing. And finally, what do you get at the end of a tort case? For the most part, you want money. Sometimes you want people to stop doing things, but for the most part, you want money. And those are compensatory damages. Then in certain cases identified by the Civil Procedure Code, you can get punitive damages, which typically are unlimited and can be massive. Compensatory damages are sometimes what we call capped. So compensatory damages can be limited. You may want $500,000, but the state of California is going to say for this claim you can only get $250,000. And that can be controversial. That can be controversial when you have an injured child who will need care for the rest of their life, and $250,000 just won't cover. If it were a medical malpractice case. But what you need to know are just what distinguishes compensatory damages from punitive damages. And finally, nominal damages, which is really when the court cannot justify any compensatory or punitive damages. It gives a symbolic damage payment that the defendant has to pay in order to just indicate that something wrong happened and maybe the code didn't cover it, or tort case law in that state didn't cover it, and really no compensatory damages are available. A nominal damages will be a very small amount, just to signify that the defendant did something wrongful. Okay, so that's an introduction to tort law and chapter 8. Thank you.